Hey there, besties. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, Betrayal of Dignity. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to all our supporters. If you're enjoying the content and want to help keep the channel going, consider buying me a coffee. There's a link in the description below. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate all your love and support. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Has her ladyship gone out for a stroll? A maid asked as she and two others chatted outside the Thisse castle one morning. She's been taking these outings quite often lately, the second maid remarked. The weather is exceptionally clear today, a rarity in Thisse. It would be a shame to stay cooped up inside, said the third maid. Well, it can't be just the weather, the second maid said, drawing the attention of the others. What do you mean? The first maid asked her. Whenever she goes out alone, she always comes back with his lordship, she tells them. Now that you mention it, they do seem to have grown quite close, the second maid said, almost happily. Yes, they do. I remember when she first arrived at the castle, their relationship didn't look so promising, the first maid agreed. That's not entirely surprising, considering the rumors about the affair between His Grace and Marchioness Isabella at the time, the second maid noted. And then there were the accusations against Her Grace for the Marchioness's murder, the third maid added. It must be that they fell in love when His Grace saved her from a death sentence. That's quite romantic. I would have fallen for him too, the second maid said. No, I'm quite certain it happened well before that, the first maid said thoughtfully. What do you mean? The third maid asked in surprise. I mean they were in love long before that incident, the first maid explained. I'm convinced they fell in love well before the incident, she tells them. Meanwhile, in the Duke's private forest, him and Chloe spent their time together. Why do you insist on being so stubborn, Your Grace? Chloe asked him. That is simply who I am, he replied, biting into an apple. I asked you yesterday to refrain from interrupting my picnic, Chloe said, adjusting her buttons as she dressed. Dear. Has it never occurred to you that you might be disrupting my duties? He asked, almost jesting. No, I cannot say it has. And how shall I put this? I don't think it's necessary to try so often to conceive, she said, her face turning red. Chloe, do you think I'm doing this for the sole purpose of having a child? Duke Damien asked, leaning closer and gently touching her hair. Well, naturally, Chloe replied, almost stumbling over her words. Ensuring the birth of an heir is one of our foremost obligations. And I must make it clear that I am not inclined to engage in activities that lack a distinct purpose. I see. All I seek is a pleasurable time with you, my wife. Regardless of our purpose, the more attempts we make the better, he said, unbuttoning his shirt as they began to kiss again. Unbeknownst to them, Gillis was hidden at a distance, watching them. Chloe, lost in the moment, heard the rustling of leaves and turned her head toward the sound but saw no one. I think there's someone there, she said, her voice barely audible as Duke Damien kissed her neck. It doesn't matter. Don't pay them any mind, Chloe, Duke Damien replied, laying her gently on the floor. When you are with me, and even when you are not, I expect your undivided attention. That is the duty of a duchess, he said, leaning closer to her face. Yes, my lord, Chloe whispered before they kissed again. If someone were to ask Chloe what she valued most about her husband, she would pause for a moment before answering. Perhaps his exceptional planning skills? Chloe said to her maid Margaret, while holding a cup of tea. Pardon? Margaret asked, looking puzzled. He always keeps me informed about his whereabouts and promptly notifies me if anything happens, Chloe explained. My lady, surely you can't mean that's his greatest strength. Besides, the example you gave seems to have little to do with planning, Margaret said, clearly surprised. Well, I can't think of much else, Chloe replied with a smile. If you were to ask me about his flaws, though, I could list many, she thought. My lady, doesn't your heart soften when you see the fiery passion in his lordship's eyes? Margaret asked, her eyes bright with admiration. It's more often that his eyes remind me of frozen lakes, Chloe said coolly, taking a sip of her tea. But he returned within just 5 days after setting off for the royal palace, riding back quickly to be with you. Margaret said, trying to paint the Duke in a romantic light. Well, His business at the palace probably concluded sooner than expected, Chloe remarked. My lady, I assure you, that's not the case. He simply cannot bear to be apart from you, even for a moment. Do you know what they call this? This is what they call love. You seem to be the only one who doesn't see it, Margaret said, clasping her hands as she observed Chloe with a hopeful look. Laugh? Chloe thought, her face flushing slightly as she pictured the Duke's smile and the way he called her my wife. No, that can't be. He's incapable of such an emotion, she thought, shaking her head. Oh, that reminds me, my lady, have you heard? Margaret said, stepping closer, causing Chloe to tense up. What is it? Chloe asked, trying to remain calm. One of the other servants told me, Margaret said, leaning in to whisper details to Chloe. Chloe's mouth fell open in shock. Her teacup slipped from her hand, falling to the ground and shattering. What? What did you just say? Chloe asked, her voice trembling with fear. Chloe tried her best to limp faster as she made her way in haste through the woods, heading for Gillis's cottage. Margaret's words echoing in her head as she walked. My lady, have you heard? Gillis has decided to resign. Despite his lordship's assurance that he would overlook the incident mentioned during the trial, it seems Gillis felt uneasy about staying. I was told he's taking a train out of Thisse this evening. He appears to be in a hurry, Margaret informed Chloe. Why would he leave so suddenly? What on earth happened, Gillis? Chloe thought, her face troubled. At Gillis's cottage, he was surprised to find Duke Damien waiting for him. Why are you still here? Did I not make it clear that you were to leave once the trial ended? Duke Damien asked, seated with his arms folded. There was something I needed to be sure of, Gillis replied. And what was that? The Duke asked. I had to be sure that you would not harm Lady Chloe, Gillis said. Duke Damien watched him silently for a moment before breaking into a laugh. He stood up and walked towards Gillis. How insolent. Truly, you do not know your place, he said, grabbing Gillis by the shoulder. Gillis tensed, watching him. Duke Damien's smirk vanished as he suddenly punched Gillis in the face, causing him to crash to the floor. Gillis lay there, coughing and in pain. Gillis, what oh, my intuition did not fail me. From the moment I first saw you, I felt a strong sense of distaste. The look in your eyes, your demeanor, your manner of speech, all of it irritated me, Duke Damien said angrily, grabbing Gillis by the shirt and lifting him against the wall. Suddenly, Chloe burst into the room. Your Grace. Please put him down. She pleaded, causing Duke Damien to flinch and turn toward her. Chloe, Gillis said amidst the pain he felt. Ha! Is this what you wanted? The Duchess's sympathy? Or were you hoping for one last secret rendezvous? Duke Damien said, gripping Gillis's shirt tighter. Please stop. Chloe begged, dropping her walking aid. Step aside before you get hurt, Chloe, Duke Damien demanded. Your Grace. Chloe called out, limping closer. Duke Damien paused. Chloe Von Thisse, do not test my patience. Move aside, he said harshly. Gillis, gathering his strength, managed to kick Duke Damien hard in the leg, freeing himself from the Duke's grip. He clutched his neck, trying to catch his breath. You have no right to speak to her ladyship that way. She will not tolerate insults from anyone, he said, his voice firm. Judging by your reckless babbling, it seems you do not value your own life, Duke Damien said, cracking his knuckles and preparing for a fight. Your Grace. Chloe shouted, stepping between them with her hands raised, trembling. Please stop. I beg of you. He helped me. He testified at the trial to save me. He is incapable of lying, yet he lied before God for my sake, she pleaded. It was not a lie that he spied on our most intimate moments, Duke Damien said, bending a knee. Gillis bowed his head. You and Gillis fabricated those details to defend me, Chloe exclaimed. No, Chloe. Do you remember our picnic in the birch forest? Duke Damien asked, causing her to freeze in shock. If you were to discover the identity of the servant who had been spying on us, would you still stand up for him? He questioned. Was that you, Gillis? Chloe asked sharply. Gillis trembled. I was merely, he stuttered, unable to continue. I'm afraid you will not be able to hide behind a mask of loyalty, Gillis. Your intentions are all too transparent to me. Boys like you are so eager to idolize others, always seeking a love that brings nothing but agony. But do you recognize the flaw in your yearning? You are fantasizing about a love that will never come to fruition, Duke Damien said with a smirk, taking Chloe's hand. Because Chloe Von Thisse is already mine, he declared, pulling her gently to himself. Let us go, Chloe, he said softly, assisting her as they walked away. Gillis remained silent, watching them with a pained expression. He is wicked to the core. He is the devil incarnate, he shouted, tears welling in his eyes. Back at the castle, Duke Damien helped Chloe to her bed. Your Grace, I swore I would be faithful as your wife. Gillis is nothing more than a good friend. Though his actions were wrong, they did not warrant driving him out, she said, but was interrupted by the Duke. Do not mention another man's name in my presence, he warned. But he is a highly capable servant. It's thanks to his efforts that we survived this unforgiving winter, she insisted. Do not speak of him as if you hold him in high regard, the Duke snapped, causing Chloe to grip her dress tightly. Then what do you want from me? She demanded, but received no response. Chloe watched him with a stern gaze before turning her head away. Please leave before I come to despise you further, she said harshly. The Duke stared at her but complied with her request. Why is he so insufferably self-righteous? Chloe wondered as she sat on her bed, clutching herself. She remembered Margaret's earlier words about the Duke being in love with her. Laugh? She thought. You wouldn't act like this in front of someone you love. Chloe lay down, berating herself. Chloe, what were you expecting? The Duke is incapable of genuine affection. You're such a fool, she said inwardly. Later that night, Duke Damien entered her room, placing her walking cane beside the bed before climbing onto it. He gently took her hair and whispered in her ear, Chloe Von Thisse. I chose to leave you alone today out of respect for you as my Duchess. I have to say, you upset me quite a bit. I suggest you refrain from siding with other men if you know what's good for you. It has thoroughly soured my mood. Now I bid you good night, my wife. He kissed her cheek and left the room, closing the door gently behind him. Inside, Chloe's heart raced. What on earth was that about? She wondered, her eyes wide open in the darkness. A few days later, Duke Damien invited Chloe to his room. Your Grace, I was not aware that the duties of a duchess included taking over for your attendant, she said, eyeing his shaving tools with confusion. My attendant's cough is quite severe. I cannot be expected to keep a sick person by my side. What if I were to contract an infectious disease? He replied with a laugh. Your Grace, Chloe said with a sigh. Yes, my wife? Duke Damien replied cheerfully. Not trimming your beard for one day will not adversely affect your impeccable visage, she tells him. It's been quite some time since I've heard such flattery, he chuckled. Chloe, he said calmly, stroking his chin. Yes, Your Grace, she replied calmly. I am hungry. You'd best hurry, he said smiling. Chloe, her expression quivering, began to shave the Duke, carefully gliding the blade against his chin. You're good at this, he remarked. I asked you to refrain from speaking, she replied, her tone clipped. They fell silent as she worked, gently brushing against his chin. There is no task that my wife cannot excel at, he said, observing her closely. You will be dismayed when you look in the mirror. I've made a complete mess of it, she said, finishing her task. Excellent. I like it when you're a mess, he responded, causing her to pause. I, however, do not like being in disarray, she said firmly. That is none of my concern, he replied. You've always insisted that I perform my duties to perfection, yet now you say you prefer it when I make a mess. I truly cannot fathom what you want from me, she said, wiping her hands with a cloth. What I want, Chloe, is to see your perfect self fall to pieces before me and me alone. I want you to care about every detail of my actions and make foolish mistakes as a result, while longing for me to embrace you despite it all, he said. Chloe looked at him, her voice soft yet firm. Allow me to ask you something, Your Grace. Go ahead, he said. Do you love me, Chloe asked, causing Duke Damien's eyes to widen in shock. Please answer me, Damien. Do you love me, she pressed. Duke Damien was silent for a moment before letting out a gentle laugh. Is that not what you want? For me to whisper in your ear that I love you? He asked. If your actions were motivated by love for me, I would try to forgive you, Chloe said. Forgive me? He asked, rising from his shaving chair and approaching her. I am sorry to disappoint you, but I do not need your forgiveness, he tells her. Your Grace, if I cannot forgive someone, I cannot love them either, she replied, causing his eyes to widen in shock. What do you mean by that? He asked, surprised. Please answer my question first. Any answer will do. All I ask is that you be honest with me, she said, turning her gaze away from him. Duke Damien struggled to find the right words. He placed his hand over hers and stroked her face gently. From the moment I first saw you, I wanted to claim you as mine. If the desire to make you mine can be called love, then I have been madly in love with you for a very long time. 1,000 times I love you, Chloe Verdier, he said, his voice sounding calm but serious. Chloe watched in shock, unable to respond immediately. I think it will all be fine now, she said calmly. What do you mean? He asked, puzzled. I will be all right if you see me become a complete mess, she said, her face turning red. The Duke stood in shock, watching her flush. The prospect of it excites me, he said, taking her hand. Everything I did to mold you into Chloe von Thisse is slowly melting away with the arrival of spring. As they found themselves together in the Duke's bed, Chloe thought, the moment I realized his true feelings, which I had not expected to be love, my frozen heart began to thaw. She let herself get lost in the moment. At the train station, Gillis sat waiting for his train. A voice called out, You there, aren't you the servant who works for House Thisse? Gillis looked up to see Lord Weiss. Lord Weiss! Gillis exclaimed, recognizing him. So you remember me? Lord Weiss said with a smile. Greetings, my lord, Gillis responded with a bow. Your name was Gillis Watteau, wasn't it? Where are you off to? Lord Weiss asked. Oh, I've decided to leave House Thisse to embark on new ventures. Some unfortunate events occurred, Gillis said, his voice tense as he kept his head bowed. I see. What a pity. Still, considering you did His Grace a great favor, he must have sent you off with a splendid letter of recommendation. He is deeply grateful to you, there's no doubt about it, Lord Weiss said happily, touching Gillis' shoulder. Do you really think so? Gillis asked calmly. Of course. After all, he has been in love with the Duchess for a very long time, and you played a significant role in saving her life, Lord Weiss revealed, causing Gillis' eyes to widen in shock. I was unaware that Master had loved her for so long, Gillis said. I do not blame you. He has always had a rather peculiar way of expressing himself, Lord Weiss replied with a laugh. But they got married so suddenly, Gillis noted. Rest assured, my dear boy, the Duke is not one to approach such serious matters as marriage impulsively. He likely spent a good year, or even 2, planning for this marriage, Lord Weiss assured him. Ah, that reminds me. If you did not receive a letter of recommendation from Lord Thisse, what do you think of working at the monastery? My mother is there at the moment, and she says they have been short on labor lately. I hope this can at least provide some consolation for your troubles, Lord Weiss added excitedly. Gillis considered the offer, still bowed as he observed Lord Weiss. This man might be able to confirm my suspicions. He thought. I thank you for the offer, my lord, but Gillis said softly before being cut abruptly by Lord Weiss. What is it? Is something troubling you? Lord Weiss asked, noticing Gillis' hesitation. Yes. I find it difficult to understand why His Grace would frame Lady Chloe for murder, subjecting her to such suffering. Therefore, I wish to avoid working at any place associated with him, Gillis explained. How did you know about that? Lord Weiss asked, his expression tense as he flinched slightly at Gillis' suspicion. Gillis clenched his fists in anger. So my suspicions were justified. Duke Thisse, he thought, his anger rising. It was only a strong suspicion, but you've just confirmed it's true, he said through gritted teeth. Just what does he intend to do to Lady Chloe? He wondered inwardly, despite his growing fury. My lord, does your offer to assist me in finding employment still stand? Gillis asked, bowing politely. Lord Weiss, feeling the weight of the situation, thought, I fell right into his trap. If Duke Thisse learns of this, it will undoubtedly lead to trouble. Since this young man knows the truth about the murder, it would be wise not to drive him away to a place where I cannot keep an eye on him. He glanced at Gillis, tense, and decided, yes, I should keep him close. Indeed, it still stands. So, will you come with me? Lord Weiss asked Gillis. In the city, Chloe walked gently toward home. I wrote to father for the first time in a while. I've been receiving letters from a post office in the south, so I sent one there as well, even though I don't have an exact address. I hope it reaches Alice, she thought, determinedly clutching her envelope. I see now that this is undeniably beautiful. It feels completely different now that spring has arrived. When I first came here, winter seemed endless, and I never imagined growing to love this place. I now feel as comfortable here as I did back in Verdier, she thought, her face beaming with joy as she admired the beauty of this. How serendipitous. Were you having a pleasant afternoon, my dear wife? Duke Damien said, wrapping his arm around her waist. Chloe turned to meet his gaze. I recall you saying you were occupied, she said. I concluded the meeting early. I couldn't let my business keep me away when my wife is out and about on her own, he replied, causing her face to turn red. Your face has gone red, he remarked with a laugh. It's a warm day, Chloe said, turning away and trying to hide her flushed face. Now, what do you have there in your arms? Duke Damien inquired. Oh, it's nothing, Chloe said, quickly hiding the envelope behind her. It doesn't look like nothing to me, Duke Damien said. I assure you, it is of no interest whatsoever, Chloe said with a smile, thinking, I must never let him see it. Back at the post office Chloe had just visited, the attendant showed her a collection of stamps. Your Grace, would you like to see these? These are stamps commemorating our victory in the war 2 years ago. They were so popular at the time that there was even a shortage. This is the last remaining set. Would you be interested in purchasing it? He said, displaying a stamp featuring Duke Damien. Chloe observed them silently. They are merely stamps with images of Thisse strawberries. I found them quite charming. The stamps were designed to mark the summer solstice, and as Duchess, it is only natural for me to take an interest in such matters, she said, trying to hide the truth. Strawberries, you say? Duke Damien asked, sounding doubtful. Yes. Truly, it is of no importance, she said, but was cut off as the Duke quickly snatched the envelope from her. Excellent. I'm quite fond of strawberries myself, he said, opening the envelope. My lord, please give that back. Chloe protested, trying to retrieve it. How can I possibly suppress my curiosity when you're acting like this? He said, examining the contents. In an attempt to retrieve the envelope, Chloe accidentally knocked it from Duke Damien's hand. The contents scattered and fell into a nearby fountain. Oh, Chloe exclaimed, distressed. Oh dear, since when did my face remind you of a strawberry? Duke Damien asked, staring at the stamp with his image. Your face is quite the picture of disappointment. You can simply buy more, can you not? He laughed, finding her reaction amusing. Feeling embarrassed, Chloe tried to hide her disappointment. It's completely natural to feel disappointed after losing something you've paid for, she said, her face turning red. She knew those stamps were the last remaining set. Shall I retrieve it for you? Duke Damien asked. It is too late. Please, forget about it. In fact, I was practically forced into buying them, Chloe said calmly. But Duke Damien rolled up his sleeves and jumped into the fountain. Chloe watched, perplexed, as he reached for the stamps in the water. Your Grace. What are you doing? Please come out at once. She begged. There's no need to make such a fuss. Look, I have it right here, he said, smiling as he emerged drenched. You got yourself wet. There are people watching, Chloe said, noticing the onlookers. Despite seeing me daily, my wife purchased stamps featuring my face. This is the least I could do for her in return. Would you not agree? Duke Damien said happily. He leaned closer to her ear. It now occurs to me that there is a perfect place just ahead. Shall we take a quick rest there? What do you say? He whispered, causing Chloe's face to turn red. The couple soon entered the hotel nearby. They sat in a cafe, sipping tea. I didn't expect the ground floor of the hotel to be a cafe, Chloe said. Why? Was there something else you were hoping for? Duke Damien asked. Of course not. Chloe replied, her face flushing. I see, he said, resting his chin on his hand in a teasing manner. The reason I'm out and about is that I had an urgent telegram to send at the post office, he continued. A telegram? Chloe asked. Have you not heard the news? Duke Damien asked, his tone becoming serious. News? Chloe inquired, sounding unsure. Duke Damien leaned forward, his expression intense. Chloe, this concerns your father, Viscount Verdier. Do you remember the woods where we first met? It was the forest I requested from your father as a dowry. I'm sure you've heard that a gold mine was discovered there. As a result, Verdier Castle is in a festive mood. However, since that forest fell under my possession when we married, Verdier will not benefit from the mine. Yet the Viscount has not mentioned this to me. He is far too humble for his own good, Duke Damien said, his dissatisfaction evident. My father is not the type of man who would be upset by such matters, Chloe said, her gaze fixed on the table. Duke Damien observed her closely. Chloe, the telegram I sent states that Viscount Verdier will receive a 50% stake in the gold mine. Both you and your father could stand to be a bit more ambitious, he said, taking his seat. Thank you, Chloe replied calmly. Then serve me a piece of that cake with half a spoon of buttercream and half a spoon of chocolate mousse, he demanded. Chloe lifted a piece of cake, her hand shaking slightly as she added the buttercream. She fed it to him. The Damien special. That's the proper way to savor cake, though my mother never could stand it, he said, savoring the taste. Tears began to drop from Chloe's cheeks. Chloe, why on earth are you crying? Duke Damien asked, sounding surprised. Oh. I'm not quite sure. I just don't understand, she said, trying to wipe the tears from her eyes. Do you know how silly you look right now? Come, let me see your face, Duke Damien said with a smirk. I refuse. You mean to taunt me, she said, still hiding her face. I would like to see you, he said, gently holding her hand, causing her to look up at him. Chloe held his hand, her tears now a sign of happiness. They were tears of pure joy, she told him. Duke Damien watched Chloe quietly, his attention focused on her words. I thought such words were reserved for our bedchamber, he said, planting a kiss on her hand. Now I'm curious. How would you have reacted if I had given your father the entire mine? Pardon? That is not what I meant, Chloe said, her face flushing. In any case, I am very grateful. I do not know how I shall ever repay you, she added sincerely. Are you really that fond of me? He asked with a teasing smile. Your Grace, she called, her face red. The couple walked through the city. As they approached a bridge, Chloe asked politely, would you care for more of the Damien special? I no longer need it, he replied. Why is that? She inquired. Well, I have found something I like much better. Your sweet flattery, he said with a smile. Chloe blushed as she watched him. Your Grace, have you heard? She asked calmly. What is it? He responded. They say that lovers who share a kiss on this bridge will never leave each other, she said before they kissed. A few days later, they attended a performance at Swan with Lord Wyse. Is this your first time at a Julian Wyatt performance, your ladyship? There's a good reason why his Grace is a patron. Do you enjoy music as well? Lord Wyse asked. Yes, I do. I used to play the piano quite often when I was in Verdier, Chloe replied. My, now I'm intrigued, Lord Wyse said with a laugh. That's enough, Wyse. Stop pestering my wife, Duke Damien said. Pester? I was only trying to help her relax, Lord Wyse responded. And why would you think she needs that? Duke Damien asked as Johannes Swain walked in. It has been a while, my dear cousin, he said, drawing their attention as he stood behind them. Your Highness, I trust you have been in good health, Chloe said, drawing his attention. She rose and bowed slightly. Lord Wyse followed suit, but Duke Damien remained seated. Belated congratulations on your marriage, Duchess, Johannes said. I was deeply honored to receive the royal family's congratulatory message, Chloe replied politely. Duke Damien took her hand. Please, take a seat if you've finished greeting him. Your legs must be tired, he told her. Your Grace, I do not understand, Chloe began, startled by his request. Johannes watched in awe. I almost don't recognize you, Damien. You seem to have undergone a complete transformation since your marriage. I did not expect you to become such a devoted husband. As I recall, you were never like this with Marchioness Isabella, Prince Johannes told him. Marriage has a way of bringing about many changes, though that may be difficult for an unwed man like yourself to fully appreciate, Duke Damien said with a smile. Oh, you are making me jealous, Johannes exclaimed. Please do visit the palace more often to enlighten me on the wonders of conjugal life. In fact, why don't you send the Duchess over to the palace? We are about to select a lady-in-waiting, he tells Duke Damien. Lord Wyse tensed and remained in a bowing position. Chloe thought, there's so much tension in the air. Duke Damien stepped up from his seat, approaching Johannes slowly. It was but a jest, Damien. Do you really think I would do that to you and your wife? After all, you are my dearest cousin and most loyal subordinate, Johannes said, with a devilish grin, placing his hand on Damien's shoulder. What the devil are you talking about, Johannes? Duke Damien shouted, drawing everyone's attention. Chloe flinched, looking stunned. What did you just say? Johannes asked, his expression tense and surprised by Damien's outburst. I suggest you shut that mouth of yours before I wring your neck, Duke Damien added, his tone serious. How dare you, Damien? Johannes retorted, his anger evident. Now, this is how you make a proper jest, Your Highness, Duke Damien said with a smile, turning to Johannes. Later that evening, Duke Damien was alone in a room, smoking a cigar. Your Grace, where is her ladyship? Lord Wyse inquired. I sent her ahead to the train station, Duke Damien replied. So, you saw assassins inside the theatre? Lord Wyse asked. Yes. There were 3 of them, and it was clear they had been sent by the royal family. A sign of desperation. Prince Johannes's public appearance today likely had an agenda. His intentions are not difficult to deduce. He wanted to show me that he is healthy and thriving, Duke Damien said, extinguishing his cigar in the ashtray. They say the king's health has worsened, so Johannes must be feeling agitated. Do you plan to stay at Castle Rose in Swain for the time being? Lord Wyse asked. No. I shall return to Thisse at once, Duke Damien replied. Your Grace, if it is not absolutely necessary for you to go back, would it not be best to remain in Swain to monitor developments? Lord Wyse suggested. Seeing the way Prince Johannes was acting today, it seems I cannot stay here. The summer festival will soon begin in Thisse, Duke Damien said, putting on his gloves. The summer festival? Lord Wyse asked in surprise. Yes, my wife is to select the best strawberries at the event, Duke Damien replied. Ah, I see. Her Grace is too, Lord Wyse began, before reflecting on what he had just heard. Did you say strawberries? He asked in shock, looking tense. At the train station, Chloe sat waiting. She recalled Duke Damien's earlier instructions. Go ahead and wait for me at the train station. There are matters I must attend to here. If I do not come in time, you may leave for Thisse without me. The tension was palpable today. Chloe reflected on how her relationship with the royal family had already been strained due to the incident with Marchioness Isabella. Perhaps I should have stayed with him, she thought, clasping her hands on her dress. Your Grace, has his lordship not arrived yet? A coachman asked as he approached her. My apologies. He assured me he would be here on time, Chloe replied, though she felt uneasy. Where is he? She wondered. As night fell, someone approached Chloe softly. What are you doing here? Why have you not left? Duke Damien asked, causing her to startle as she met his gaze. His expression was tense. I was waiting for you, she said. Where is the train? He asked. It has departed. I could not inconvenience the other passengers solely for your sake, she replied, rising from her seat. That is a privilege of the nobility. Were you unaware of that? He questioned, puzzled. You chose to wait here alone in the dark, exposed to all kinds of dangers. What were you thinking, Chloe? He asked, still holding his head in confusion. I waited for you because I was worried. I am not so heartless. I couldn't bear to leave my husband behind after such a difficult encounter with the prince, she explained. Chloe, he said gently. Yes, Your Grace? She responded. The last train to Thisse has departed, but a train to Verdier will be arriving soon. Since it's too late to return to Thisse tonight, I suggest a brief detour to your home first, he proposed. Chloe's eyes brightened, and her cheeks flushed with color. Inwardly, Duke Damien was concerned about her being alone in the dark. "I'm sorry for getting angry. Thank you for waiting for me. Though you may not express it straightforwardly, I've grown fond of your unique way of expressing how you feel," he thought as he watched her move closer. "I would love to, Damien," she said excitedly, hugging him. As the train journeyed towards Verdier, it rattled gently along the tracks. Inside the compartment, the couple shared tender moments, their affection evident. Duke Damien, looking flushed, reached for Chloe's legs. "Just when my life's ambition seemed within reach, I ended up boarding a train to win your heart," he thought as he held her passionately. "You need to know just how much I love you, Chloe," he said softly, planting kisses on her thigh. "You can be surprisingly tender sometimes, Damien," Chloe replied, her face flushed. "Your mother was right," she added, lifting his face with her hand. "But you need not know all the dirty details of the matter," he thought, observing her serene expression. In a letter from her father, Chloe read, "To my beloved daughter Chloe. My dear, how was your journey back to Thisse? I could not help but shed tears of joy upon seeing you board the carriage with your husband. Your unexpected visit and your happiness felt like the most splendid gift. And, my daughter, do not be surprised, but your mischievous younger sister sent along a portrait," Lord Verdier wrote, referring to the portrait of Alice holding her baby. "I have a feeling it will not be long before we all gather as a family. I have heard that the summer solstice festival will soon be held in Thisse. How wonderful it would be to live each day as a celebration. My sincere hope is that you will savor your present happiness to the fullest. I love you, dear Chloe," her father concluded. "Your Grace," Chloe exclaimed, placing her hands against Duke Damien's chest in an attempt to resist him. "What is it?" he asked, looking displeased. "Your mother will be here any moment." "We should stop now," she insisted. "But I know for a fact that you enjoy it when I get carried away with you," he replied, causing her face to flush red. "We really don't have time," she said, but he resisted her, kissing her as he pressed closer. "Ah, please, Your Grace, wait," Chloe begged, her voice tinged with a soft moan. "Chloe, what on earth is taking you so long to get ready?" Damien's mother asked with a sigh, opening the door. She gasped upon seeing Damien on top of Chloe. "Oh my, Damien," she said awkwardly, not minding them. "Good morning, mother. I needed some encouragement from my wife for the upcoming race," Damien said, turning towards his mother. Chloe turned her head away in embarrassment. "Yes, I'm sure Chloe's efforts this morning will pay off," his mother said with a giggle. "I will not disappoint you, mother," Damien assured her. Like mother, like son. They don't have an ounce of shame in them, Chloe thought, feeling tense as she hid her face from her mother-in-law. "Tell me, how did you find judging the strawberries?" Damien's mother asked Chloe as they walked outside with her holding an umbrella. "It was the summer festival. I was rather nervous. I'm not particularly comfortable being in front of such a large audience," Chloe admitted, sounding a bit shy. "I would never have guessed, given the enthusiasm you displayed," her mother-in-law exclaimed. "Well, it is my duty as Duchess," Chloe said to Lady Thisse. "Ah, there he is," Lady Thisse said, drawing Chloe's attention to Duke Damien. Chloe's eyes widened in surprise to see him outside without a shirt. "Are you surprised?" his mother asked, turning to Chloe. "Well, he does seem rather lightly dressed for competing in a running race," Chloe said, turning her flushed face away. The race soon began, with the men running furiously. "Chloe, Damien is quite a difficult man, isn't he?" Lady Thisse remarked. "He has always been ambitious since he was a boy. Our father always said that a touch of ambition was the key to success," Chloe agreed as they watched the race. "In Damien's case, he may have too much of it. I tried to be a role model for him when he was young, hoping he would develop a sense of loyalty to the royal family. But children rarely grow up as their parents intend. If His Majesty were to pass away with the prince's reputation in shambles, it would profoundly impact Damien. In fact, the entire world around him would change," his mother said. "Your Grace, is there something you would like to tell me?" Chloe asked politely, halting her steps. Perhaps she will be different. No one was able to change Damien. But she, Lady Thisse thought, closing her umbrella. The bell rang loudly, followed by cheers from the crowd. "His Grace has won," people shouted, seeing Duke Damien leading the race to the finish line. Chloe, I have only one request to make, Lady Thisse said, drawing close to Chloe. Please, do not become a source of weakness for Damien, she added, watching the happy Duke wave at Chloe from a distance. Are you enjoying the festival? Duke Damien asked Chloe as they walked together along the field. Yes, very much, she replied. How was your time with my mother? He inquired. Chloe hesitated before answering. I can tell she loves you very much, she said, stepping ahead of him. That's why she sometimes makes mistakes out of fear. Even if she seems ungracious at times, I hope you'll understand, Duke Damien said, catching up with her. Your Grace, do you ever experience moments of fear? Chloe asked. I would never admit to being afraid, even if I were seconds away from a bullet, he replied. Yes, of course, Chloe said with a sigh. I'd rather die laughing than be remembered as a pathetic, trembling coward. That way, you'll never forget me, he said, taking a strand of her hair, placing it next to his nose, and savoring its scent. Around them, ladies ran about, plucking flowers and laughing with one another. Chloe watched couples dancing, falling quiet as she observed. Your Grace, I've been diligently practicing walking with the brace you gave me, she told him. As she saw people kissing, she fell silent. One day, I shall present you with flowers like those women over there. You see, I was told that during this festival, it's customary for women to pick flowers while stepping backward and present them as gifts, she said, her cheeks reddening with happiness. Is that so? I look forward to it. Not once has a woman given me flowers, Duke Damien chuckled as he helped Chloe sit on a bench. Perhaps it wasn't that they didn't want to, but that they couldn't, she replied, causing him to flinch. Why is that? He asked. Their lives could be ruined if they got on the wrong side of you, she said with a light giggle, teasing him. Why would you assume I would ruin the life of a woman confessing her love for me? How ludicrous. What on earth do you take me for? He said, sounding hurt. Chloe observed him calmly, reflecting on their relationship. Who is this man I've married? Our first encounter, when I thought he was the most arrogant man in the world. Our first kiss, which felt like waves crashing against a cliff. And a proposal that seemed like a threat. How many times has my world been turned upside down since meeting him? I'm afraid of what else may come my way if I stay with him, she thought, just before raindrops began to fall. Oh dear, it's raining, Duke Damien said, reaching his hand out to feel the raindrops. Your Grace, I would like to be your strength. Your mother told me I mustn't become your source of weakness, Chloe said suddenly, unfazed by the rain. Do you wish to be my weakness? He asked calmly. No, she replied. A weapon. Are you declaring your intent to join me on the battlefield? He asked her. The couples in the field dispersed, laughing gently as they went. Duke Damien placed his hand on her head. Life itself is a battle, isn't it? Especially for someone like me, she said, surprising him and reminding him of their first encounter in the Verdier forest. Duke Damien remained still, his hand resting on her head. I know you will always fight for me. That's why I intend to do my very best to support you and ensure I am never a weakness to you, she said, her gaze fixed on the ground. Oh, and Chloe began, but Duke Damien interrupted her by gently caressing her cheek. He leaned in and kissed her, silencing her. Chloe, allow me to say this, you have never been a source of weakness, not even for a moment. That's how it has been, and that's how it will always be, he said, before kissing her again under the rain. Soon, some ladies began playing in the rain, while Duke Damien and Chloe sat together, watching them with amusement. Did you know that many people born in Thisse have birthdays close to one another? Duke Damien asked. It must be because their parents became lovers during the midsummer festival, Chloe replied. Precisely. Passion is contagious. So, my wife. As Duke and Duchess, we must lead by example, he said, rising from his seat and offering her his hand. Chloe's walking cane rested on the ground as she stood, facing him. Everyone around stopped to watch them. I'm feeling bashful, Chloe admitted. Why is that? He asked, sounding concerned. Well, I've never danced in front of so many people before. Not to mention, my dance skills are lacking. I'm afraid they'll mock me, she said shyly. Chloe, no one will dare mock you as long as I am by your side, he said, lifting her into his arms. Chloe's face turned red with surprise. How do you feel now? Are you less embarrassed? He asked. He gently set her down and took her hand, leading her in a slow dance. Chloe slipped and fell, but Duke Damien caught her and held her close. Chloe looked down at her feet, then took off her shoes. Damien watched, puzzled, as she stood barefoot on the grass. Are you all right? He asked. Yes, I'm fine, she said, placing her arms on his shoulder. Damien took her hands once more, and they danced gently in the rain. Chloe looked happy. Damien. Thank you, she said. Just then, the rain intensified, and people began running for cover. For what? Duke Damien asked. Thank you for persuading me to dance. And I'm sorry for declining your invitation to dance at Castle Rose, Chloe said excitedly. He embraced her closer as the rain soaked them. Chloe, the rain is getting stronger, he said. Your Grace. The carriage is ready. Their coachman called out. Damien. I want to keep dancing. I would like to keep dancing. I want to keep dancing with you, Chloe said eagerly. As you wish, he replied, taking her hand as they continued to dance in the rain. As the carriage moved, Duke Damien gently undid Chloe's dress. Dance, Chloe. Move for me, and for me alone, he said, his voice filled with desire. Chloe panted as she moved rhythmically on his lap. Damien, Damien, please, Chloe moaned softly. Damien responded with tender kisses. Ah, please, Damien, Chloe gasped, reaching her limit. I love you, Damien, said the Duchess, he told her in bed, reminding her of her words. When did I say that? She asked, her face happy. Just now, he tells her before embracing her. 3 months later, Chloe was at the castle while the Duke was away. Are you quite sure? She asked a physician eagerly. My lady, His Grace has arrived, a maid announced. Duke Hugo stepped into the parlor. Your Grace, there is something I must tell you, Chloe said, rising from her seat excitedly. Chloe, Duke Damien began, his tone somber, His Majesty the King has passed away. Chloe looked at him with concern. The news is being kept secret for now, but an official announcement will be made soon, he said with a sigh, his hands folded. Now, what was it you wished to tell me? He asked. The doctor took a bow and said, You see, her ladyship is with child. Duke Damien's eyes widened in amazement. Ah, he exclaimed, dropping his hand and focusing his gaze on Chloe. Damien? Chloe called, her hand resting on her tummy.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.